You have probably seen those watermelon fields in Korea, Japan, China, and other parts of Asia, where the fruits look almost unreal. Huge, clean, beautiful watermelons, growing as if the field knows some secret that ordinary gardeners do not. And of course, every gardener who sees that has the same thought. How do they grow watermelons like that? And why is it so hard to repeat at home? When people see results like that, most of them assume the answer must be money. Expensive fertilizers, heavy feeding, special chemicals, endless treatments, some advanced formula that normal growers simply do not have. That is the natural assumption because when we see a huge harvest, we usually imagine that someone just added more to the plant. But what if I told you the secret often begins somewhere else entirely? What if the difference is not mainly in what they pour onto the plant, but in what they connect the plant to? The first time I learned about this method, I honestly did not believe it could be real. Because the method sounds strange when you hear it for the first time. In many cases, the watermelon is still watermelon above the soil, but below the soil it may be standing on the roots of another plant. Not another watermelon plant, another species. And suddenly, the whole story changes from what fertilizer do they use to, wait, what roots is this plant actually growing on? And this method did not appear because someone wanted to show off giant fruit. It appeared because growers had a serious problem underground. Modern reviews trace the first reported use of watermelon grafting for disease resistance to Japan in 1927. Where growers were trying to protect plants from fusarium wilt, a destructive soil disease that attacked the root system. That detail is important because this method began as a survival tool, not a luxury trick. Growers noticed that if the fruiting top of a watermelon was joined to a tougher root system, the plant could keep living and producing where ordinary watermelon roots were failing. That was the breakthrough. The fruit did not need to change. The roots did. From there, the idea spread because it solved a real problem. Over time, grafted watermelon became a major commercial practice across East Asia, and reviews note that adoption climbed extremely high in places like Japan. Once growers saw that stronger root systems meant more reliable fields, the method stopped looking strange and started looking practical. So what do they actually use? One of the classic rootstocks for watermelon is bottle gourd, also known as laganaria, and in other cases, growers use pumpkin or squash-type rootstocks. That is why people sometimes say a watermelon is growing on pumpkin roots. Strange wording, but the basic idea is real. And once you understand that, a lot of things begin to make sense. A watermelon can look strong above the soil, but its own roots are not always ideal in cold ground, salty soil, disease pressure, or drought. In other words, the plant that looks powerful on the surface may be surprisingly vulnerable in the place that matters most. Here is what the process actually looks like in practice. First, growers raise two separate seedlings to nearly the same stem thickness, a watermelon seedling for the top and a rootstock for the bottom. Most commonly bottle gourd, also called laganaria, or an interspecific squash rootstock. Watermelon grafting is commonly done when the seedlings are still very young, because the stems are small, flexible, and easier to match cleanly. Next comes the key cut. In the common one-cotyledon method, the grower cuts the rootstock at an angle, removes one cotyledon and the growing point, but leaves one cotyledon attached so the rootstock can keep supporting the plant without growing its own new shoot. Then, the watermelon scion is cut below its cotyledons at a matching angle, and the two fresh-cut surfaces are pressed together and held in place with a small grafting clip. But the plant is not ready yet the moment it is clipped. Right after grafting, the seedling is placed into a healing chamber with very high humidity, almost no direct light, and careful temperature control so the scion does not dry out before the tissues fuse together. After several days of healing and then a short hardening period, the plant is transplanted with the graft union kept above the soil line, so the watermelon top does not make its own roots and cancel the whole point of the graft. That stronger root system can change a lot. Research shows grafted watermelon can better handle chilling, water stress, salinity, and some soil-borne disease pressure, depending on the rootstock. So the method is not some old farming myth. It is a very practical form of plant engineering. But here is the part that makes the story even more interesting. A stronger root system does not automatically mean the final watermelon will be better in every single way. Different rootstocks can change fruit firmness, ripening speed, sugar levels, and flavor balance, which means growers are often making a trade, not pushing a magic button. And honestly, that is what makes the whole method so fascinating to me. It was born from a real underground problem, refined by growers who needed solutions, and later scaled because it worked in the field. The fruit gets all the attention, but the real story begins where almost nobody looks, in the roots. So the next time you see a giant watermelon and think the secret must be expensive feeding, remember this. Sometimes the real difference is not what was added from above, but what was chosen below. And sometimes the path to a better harvest begins the moment a watermelon is given someone else's roots.